On a map, Virginia looks unified, but stand anywhere from the tidal marshes near the Atlantic to the highest crest of the Appalachians, and it feels like 5 different worlds forced inside one border. The land itself splits Virginia into rival regions, feeding hidden tensions that most states never face. So how did geography fracture a single state from the inside out? And why does that still shape life here every day? Salt water creeps far inland along Virginia's broad rivers, carving a low, flat world that never quite feels like solid ground. Here, the land gives way to the tide. The Chesapeake Bay and its estuaries, Potomac, Rappahannock, York, and James, fan out across the eastern third of the state, creating natural highways long before roads or railways. Early settlers arrived by ship, not wagon, and built their lives around the water's edge. Tobacco warehouses and wharves sprang up where the rivers widened, forming the first clustered towns. Everything of value, crops, people, even news, moved by boat. The richest planters measured their fortunes not in acres but in river frontage. Their grand houses faced the water, not the road. A faded letter from a planter near the James reads, "The river is our lifeline. Without it, there is nothing." Power gathered here, close to the tide, where ships could dock and goods could flow out to the world. The land itself seemed secondary. East of the invisible fall line, the ground is so level and soft that a heavy rain can turn a field into marsh. Yet, this was the heart of Virginia's first economy, shaped by the rhythms of the tide. The rivers dictated where people settled and how they lived. Even today, the place names Northern Neck, Middle Peninsula, Virginia Peninsula, echo the branching arms of water that first pulled Virginia together, but also set it apart from what lay inland. Virginia's first power came from water, not land. Where the rivers lose their patience and tumble over ancient stone, Virginia's geography draws its first invisible line. The Fall Line, a band of rapids and waterfalls, slices across the state from the Potomac to the James. Here, ocean-going ships found their limit. Cargo that had floated easily from the Atlantic now had to be hauled ashore, loaded onto wagons, and sent west by land. At these abrupt river breaks, new towns took root. Richmond on the James, Fredericksburg on the Rappahannock, Petersburg on the Appomattox. These were not just settlements, they were transfer points where the power of the tide gave way to the muscle of overland movement. The energy trapped in falling water did not go to waste. Early entrepreneurs built mills beside the rapids, harnessing the drop to grind grain, saw lumber, and later to spin cotton. Industry gathered at the edge of the fall, drawing workers and traders and shifting influence inland. An archivist notes, "Richmond exists because the river could go no further. The falls made it necessary, and the land made it possible." As the population pressed westward, the fall line became more than a barrier. It became a magnet. Roads and later railroads converged at these river cities, reinforcing their status as gateways to the interior. For the first time, the balance of power began to slip away from the coast. The natural world, once a highway, now dictated where people had to stop, unload, and reconsider their direction. The line was never marked on early maps, but its consequences shaped every decision that followed. West of the fall line, the land rises gently into the Piedmont. Here, the ground firms up, rolling hills replace marsh, and the clay-rich soil holds its shape after a rain. The rivers no longer dictate every movement. Instead, the land itself becomes the path. Early farmers found these foothills easier to work than the tangled forests or soggy flats behind them. Fields could stretch wider and wagons could roll farther without sinking. Roads followed the contours, snaking along ridges and dipping through shallow valleys. By the 1700s, wagon roads like the Three-Notched Road threaded west from Richmond, opening new ground for tobacco, corn, and wheat. Later, railroads traced the same gentle grades, weaving towns like Charlottesville and Lynchburg into the fabric of the state. A Piedmont farmer's words echo through time. "My father built his house where the road met the creek. Everything we needed came down that road: seed, news, neighbors." The Piedmont became Virginia's connective tissue, linking east and west with ribbons of dirt, iron, and, later, asphalt. towns clustered where crossroads met, each one a small world unto itself. But the land's openness also meant people could move on, and many did. Farms multiplied, but no single place became the heart of the region. Roads and rails brought movement, but not unity. The Piedmont spread people out, never quite pulling them together. Beyond the last hills, the mountains waited, ready to test how far these networks could reach. The mountains begin as a line on the horizon, then rise steep and close, folding the land into narrow hollows and shadowed valleys. Here, the Blue Ridge, the Valley and Ridge, and the Appalachian Plateau shape daily life in ways outsiders rarely notice. Roads twist along creek beds and climb ridges in tight, looping turns. A trip between neighboring towns can take hours, even if they are only 20 miles apart. Weather funnels through the valleys, sometimes trapping fog for days or bringing sudden snow that cuts off entire communities. For much of the 20th century, mountain counties waited years, sometimes decades, after the rest of Virginia for basics like electricity or paved highways. A resident from Wise County remembers that they got electric lights in 1948. Before that, they made do with kerosene and candles. In these uplands, distance is measured not by the mile, but by the effort it takes to cross the land. Each valley became its own world, tied together by kin, memory, and the rhythm of the seasons. The mountains did not just slow travel, they shaped a kind of independence that still lingers. People in Virginia often look outward for opportunity, but not in the same direction. In the north, daily life is shaped by the gravitational pull of Washington, D.C. Government contracts, technology firms, and federal agencies drive a booming economy that rarely glances south. The region's population has more than doubled since the 1970s, fueled by newcomers drawn to jobs that exist nowhere else in the state. A state demographer notes, Northern Virginia is less a region and more a portal. Most of its residents cross an invisible border every morning, heading for offices that answer to a different city. In the South, the story is quieter. Once anchored by tobacco and textiles, many counties have been losing people for decades. Since the 1980s, towns that once thrived on agriculture now face empty storefronts and shrinking schools. The jobs that remain are often far from home or gone entirely. Meanwhile, in the West, mountain counties still navigate the legacy of isolation. Broadband coverage lags behind the rest of the state, making remote work or online business a distant promise. Some communities rely on the same narrow roads and slow-moving trains that defined their world a century ago. No single place sets the pace for Virginia. Instead, the state stretches north toward federal power, south into slow decline, west across rugged hills. Each region answers to a different future. Every weekday, more than 1 million Virginians travel the same corridors their ancestors once followed by foot, wagon, or rail. Interstate 95, the main artery from Washington to Richmond, runs almost parallel to the Old Kings Highway, an 18th century route that first carried goods and news between the fall line cities. Farther west, Interstate 81 tracks the ancient Great Wagon Road, which once funneled settlers and livestock down the Shenandoah Valley. These highways did not carve new paths through the state. They updated the ones geography had already chosen. Suburbs now sprawl across the Piedmont, clustering along the same uplands where colonial turnpikes and later railroads found firm ground. In Northern Virginia, data centers line the old turnpike corridors, their servers pulsing with global traffic just a few miles from where tobacco wagons once rolled. Planners point out that the most valuable land for digital infrastructure sits on the same ridges and gentle slopes that made early roads possible. Even the daily commute, whether by car, train, or fiber optic cable, traces the logic of a landscape that has never stopped directing where people move and where they stay. Virginia's boundaries still shape its daily decisions, from data centers in the Piedmont to rural roads winding through the Appalachians. Geography remains the silent architect, deciding where people live, work, and connect. In a nation seeking unity, Virginia's landscape quietly reminds us, not all borders are drawn on maps.